Hey, good morning. Welcome, everybody. What's happening? All right, Friday zoomed by, Saturday zoomed by, and here we are, Sunday already. Don't worry, guys. The weekend's not over yet. We're still gonna have a little bit of fun before it's time to go back to work on Monday. Hopefully, you guys have some fun activities planned for this afternoon as well. But we're going to start off the morning, with the Addicted to Gear live show. This is show 245. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's doing really well, and I hope you're ready for another interesting show. We have a lot to talk about, as usual. And for those of you that are the early risers here on Sunday, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys taking the time to wake up early. And if you're the night owls and you're up late, I know there's a few of you here already. Thank you for staying up. Hopefully you won't be wrecked tomorrow at work. Or I think as the technical term I like to use is shkambambulated. You know, when you go to work and you're kind of hungover from the night before or the activities the night before. That's I call that being shkambambulated. I don't know if anybody else here uses that term, but that's my technical term for just being wrecked. All right, good. Good morning, everybody, and it's really nice to see everybody here on a regular basis. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. This week, we're going to be talking about some interesting items that have come across my feed. We're going to be talking about some gear. We're going to be talking about lots of stuff, and obviously, the channel is open to your comments and questions as well. Most importantly, I would say, your comments and questions. So if you guys are, looking to get any answers or have any technical questions or anything like that, don't be shy. Jump right in. We welcome all of the comments. All right. So good morning, everybody. I'm not going to go through the roll call this morning. I think there's a lot of regulars here. I don't know if there's any new faces today. If you're new or here for the first time, just type in new in the chat so we know who you are and we can welcome you. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure many of you have been here before. So if you have been here before, you know the drill. We usually have a poll question. This week, I posted the poll questions a couple of days early. Usually I'm a little bit late with that, but this week I decided to go a little bit earlier with the poll question. And as a matter of fact, we might even open up the show with the poll question, because usually we save it for the end, but why wait? Let's jump right in. In the meantime, while I pull up the poll questions, if anybody here has any new gear to talk about, any new acquisitions, please let us know. I know our friend, is he here? Let's see. I don't want to talk about stuff when they're not here, but if he's here, I'll mention it. Let me just go through the chat here. And yep, Shane is here. Hey, Shane. So Shane mentioned earlier that he bought a new ESP GR62. And thanks for sending me the photo of the guitar, Shane. Pretty nice looking guitar. Does the GR stand for grassroots? I think the ESP has a grass, what they call a grassroots line. So he had a new guitar come in. Hopefully it's to your liking, Shane. Or is that a guitar that's going to be temporary? I know Shane likes to flip a lot of guitars. Gene, yeah, we want to... Gene always makes me laugh. He says, new or nude? It was new, Gene. New. I don't need to know who amongst the group is nude right now. I don't need to know that. That's a little bit too much information. Oh, man. D-Mac says his internet's been dropping in and out all day, so hopefully it stays on for the show. D-Mac, that usually happens when you don't pay your bills, man. It's happened to me. I'm just kidding. I'm sure you pay your bills. Vox says he's off tomorrow because I have to take my wife to Hamilton for day surgery. Well, hopefully nothing too serious, Vox. Hope it goes smooth for your wife. Never fun to have surgery, that's for sure, but hopefully it's minor and everything goes well. Wish her all the best from us. Wayne says he got a Steenberger Synapse. What a great new toy. Very cool, Wayne. I think you've mentioned that in the past. I think you were eyeballing that, weren't you? So congratulations on that, man. Let us know how you like it. I know a lot of people mention they got new toys and stuff, but I want to know how you like the stuff. If it's something that is sort of just a transient piece of gear that's going to come, and leave, or if it's something that you've been after for a long time. I'm trying to get the picture quality on my camera better than it is. It's been very grainy lately. I don't know why that is. It really sucks. It's supposed to be, 4K, but it's definitely not 4K right now. But anyway, maybe that's a good thing, the way I look in the morning. Morning, Rich. How's it going, Rob? Searching for tone. Profile Productions. So nobody put in new. So I guess Steve says, Joe Dirt, I'm new. Is that the only... not many new people here, eh? All right, well, it's okay. It's okay to have familiar faces. I guess the newbies will trickle in a little bit later. Good morning, Peg City Pickups. How's it going? All right, so let's talk about our poll question right off the bat, because let's open with that. Why not? I think you guys know where it is right now. YouTube moves things around sometimes, but it used to be in the community section. Now it's in the post sections of the YouTube page. But anyway, the poll question this week was, would you ever buy a used guitar, or is it new only for you? Now, just a little insight on that. The reason why I had to ask that question is because I do know people, even friends of mine, that will refuse to buy a guitar if it's used. They'll only want to buy a new guitar. And I don't understand that. For me, there's a lot of value, I would say, in picking up a used guitar. But for some reason, some people have like a mental block where they don't want to touch or own a guitar that was potentially played, touched, used by someone else. So I don't know where that stems from exactly. I don't know what psychological reason somebody would be opposed to that. So I asked the question in the poll because I want to get some insight. If there's anybody here that feels the same way, maybe has an issue with used gear, let me know. So the responses to that questions, the potential responses were, no way, I only buy brand new guitars, gotta have that new smell. Second option was, maybe if it's in mint condition and doesn't smell like a dive bar. Third would be, of course, used guitars have soul, history, and killer deals. And finally, forget new or used, I just want more guitars. So first I want to ask any of you out there completely 100% opposed to owning a used guitar. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be a used guitar, it could be other gear as well, but anything used. Anybody here opposed to that? Just curious, because, for me, I don't really worry about gear being new or used. Of course, I will avoid anything that's been obviously abused. Or specifically if the used gear really smells like nicotine, cigarettes, that I would not be able to remove easily. I've had that challenge before, where I've purchased, I think it was a guitar case, and it was a tweed case on top of that. So, if it's a plastic case, it's a little easier, and I guess the nicotine smell doesn't necessarily permeate as it would with the fabric. But I bought that thing and I brought it home and thinking that I'd be able to like get the smell out, and it took me a long time to get that smell out. I finally got it out. It still has maybe a little hint, of that cigarette smoke type thing, but I had to like do a lot of things to it to get it out. So I learned my lesson from that, and I'm not going to do that again. I tend to ask now if it's a non-smoking environment or smoking environment. So let's start off with the most popular answer in the poll question. So overwhelmingly, 63% of you said, of course, used guitars have soul history and killer deals. So that means that most of you, like me, don't mind buying used stuff. And I think it's absolutely true that you can definitely get awesome deals on used gear. You're not going to be able to get deals like that on new stuff. That's for sure. And, there's a lot of great quality, practically new used gear floating out there. So why not? Why not grab it when you can? The second most popular question, 23% of you said, forget new or used, I just want more guitars. So for a lot of you, it's that question does not even come into play. It's just, give me a guitar, I don't care what kind of condition it is, I'll take it. Then 11% of you said, maybe if it's in mint condition and doesn't smell like a dive bar. So some of you are a little picky about your gear. You don't necessarily want to buy something that is not going to be practically new. And then only 4% of you said, no way, I only buy brand new guitars, gotta have that new smell. So I want to know who, if anyone here selected that response. If anybody here? We did have some comments there, so I'll read some of the comments just to see if anybody here really is opposed to used. So someone says, almost exclusively used. Why spend $2,500 when you can spend $50? I don't know if you can get a guitar for $50. If you can, let me know where, because I'd grab 4 or 5 of them. Someone else here says, there's so many mint guitars on the used market. I prefer to buy used, but it has to be like new. If it doesn't feel, if not, it feels like it doesn't belong to me. I get you. Okay. So it has to be like new. Otherwise, I guess you don't necessarily like guitars that have been modified or changed in any way. So in other words, if you buy a guitar, you're going to buy something that is pretty much stock. I think that's where a lot of people draw the line. If you buy a guitar and it's been modified in any way, some people, can discreetly modify a guitar so it's not obvious, and other people go ballistic and they'll just like do all kinds of crazy things to a guitar. So for me, if I can't put it in the condition I want it to be quickly, I'm not going to bother. Let's see here. Great thing about used guitars is most of the time you can sell them for what you bought them for. Try a new style guitar for a month or 2, then flip it. That's a good point. You definitely lose a lot less money on a used item, like a car. Obviously, you're paying premium for a new item, right? So that is absolutely true. So if you're the type of person that buys and sells often, then you definitely want to probably go the used route. So Jim mentions, he says, so you don't want something beat up. Does that include brand new relics? I knew somebody was going to mention that. I knew somebody was going to open the door to that relic conversation. Anybody want to comment on that? Anybody own a relic guitar here? If you have one, raise your hand. I have. I do. Let's see if I'm the only one. Someone else here says, I usually buy used to save money, but during the pandemic, used prices were almost as much as new prices, so I purchased some new guitars. I guess if you don't have a choice and you still want to scratch that itch for a new instrument, then you're going to spend the money. But I think a lot of people rather have some dough in their pocket at the end of the day. A few years back, I was looking for a new Telecaster, really liked the look of the American Special Series, but they were out of my budget at nearly €1,000. But then I found a used one on Reverb for about the same as a brand new Player Series at the time, so I took a punt on it. Turned out, had barely been played, still had hanging tags and factory strings on it. A receipt was in the gig bag showing the guy had bought it a few as new as an X-Display B-stock from DV247 for about €700. He kept it. About 6 months before advertising it, I paid €555 for it, including delivery. It was an absolute bargain and has been my main guitar ever since. So, there are some stories like that where you can get a practically new guitar and save hundreds of dollars on it. If you're quick on the draw. There's still lots of deals out there. Jack says, Tony, I have a real relic. When I have one, Tony, I have a real relic. When I have one, did myself. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean there, Jack. I know it's early. Sometimes the coordination in the morning with the fingers is a little bit off. Maybe you can clarify what you're trying to say there. Peter England says, would you pay more for a relic new car? Well, let me put it to you this way, Steve. Would you pay more for a fake vintage Ferrari? Because that's what all the reissues are. Right? Even though they're not reliced. So it's all a question of taste and opinion, I guess. Rico says, for the smoke issue, I bought an ozone generator, Amazon, $50, and did a great job getting rid of the smoke smell. Actually, Rico, I have one too now. I actually got one recently, but this was way before I even knew what an ozone generator was. But I did it the old-fashioned way. What I did was I took the entire case, took it outside. I sprayed it with a whole bunch of stuff first, just to try and get a lot of the chemical smell, the smoke smell out of it as much as I could. And then I took it outside. I just opened it up and I left it out in the sun for a couple of days, which is basically natural ozone. And it did quite a good job. And then eventually what I did to finish it off was I took one of those bounce sheets that you put in the dryer so that you don't get static cling with your clothes. I just threw it in the case and closed it and left it like that for a while. You'd be surprised how that, fabric softener, chemical, whatever it is, that's 100% toxic, I'm sure, how it can permeate into the fabric of something like a case, and it did a rather good job. Jack says, I played it for 30 years and relative myself. I think he meant to say, I played it for 30 years and reliced it myself. Jack, are you using voice recognition or something like that, because it's missing out on some keywords that you're writing there. Um, Shane says my RG 421 is $499 new. I got it for $180 used. My ESP Grassroots is $450 new. I got it used for $100. So there's, living proof. Shane is living proof that you can save a ton of money, so that you can get like maybe 3 guitars for the price of like 1 or 1.5 or whatever. Yeah, man. Boomerang says people actually pay to have classic cars and trucks deliberately painted to appear old. They look great. I think there's a market for everything. A lot of people do joke about the Relic guitars and stuff like that. And I get it. It's not for everyone. Some people like them, some people don't. But I say just, don't knock it before you try it. If you try it and it's not for you, great. Let it be. It's fine. We don't all have the same taste, but some people really do like them. And I'm not an exclusive. It has to be Relic or vintage guy. I'll play anything, but I do appreciate the Relic guitars that I have. For some reason, they're freeing in the sense that you don't have to worry about them. A lot of new guitars, like you worry about getting them nicked or scratched or chipped or whatever. The Relic guitars, you don't have any of that. You can just play them without worrying about them, which I feel is somewhat freeing, Rob says someone sweats Formunda cheese on a 5-year-old guitar isn't as sexy as it is on a vintage guitar. I mean, we can get into the discussion about, new, used gear, vintage gear. I mean, vintage gear is all used, right? A lot of people drool over vintage gear and are willing to pay a premium for it. And it's all Relic and it's all used, and it's got, some of them have heavy DNA on them too. So that it's not, always a clean vintage guitar that you would hope for. Some guy says I have a mint Honer. I picked up for $20 with a case from the Salvation Army. So there you go, another great deal. David says I like to keep my stuff looking new. Me too, David. I mean, to a certain degree, I don't go out of my way to scuff or ding or chip my guitars. I have the guitars that are in good condition, and I have the guitars that are Relic, and then I have the ones that are naturally Relic by accident in between, and I love them all. Indeed, the first ding is always the most painful. Absolutely. Totally agree, especially if it's on a really beautiful looking brand new guitar, that you just got. It hurts. But once it's done, it's done. It's going to happen eventually. Boomerang says a while ago I purchased an Ibanez Prestige made in Japan and hard case secondhand that was like new. Still have it. The prices are double nowadays. Yep. And I think the prices are going to keep on going up, guys. I didn't want to bring up the conversation about what's going on with all the tariffs, the tariff wars that people refer to it, but it hasn't happened yet because from what I see in the stores right now, people are still working with inventory that they've already purchased before these tariff wars started. So, the prices haven't dramatically gone up yet, but I say yet, because if it does continue, I'm pretty sure the prices are going to go up across the board. Whether you're in the States or Canada, regardless, I think they're all going to go up. Because nobody makes a product in a silo anymore. It's just the way it is these days. It's like you can't build a car, for example, and build every component in Canada or in the United States. That doesn't happen. components come from all over the world, and it's gonna affect the bottom line. And I think it's the same for guitars. You might buy the guitar somewhere in the States, but tuners, hardware, pickups, whatever, they're all coming from different places. So get ready. It's going to happen. I would say, hang on to your gear. It might not be a good time to sell stuff. Maybe you wait, because I have a feeling the prices are all going to go up soon. So it is what it is. Steve says, how many people love their guitar until it gets a dent or a chip in the paint and then dump it to get a new one? I know people that would do that. That just, every time they look at the chip or they feel the chip, it's like, it's not good anymore. I got to dump it. I want to get a new one now. I understand it. If it's a really nice guitar, like I would say I would probably feel that way if I got a chip in my PRS, for example, which is in immaculate condition. I've kept it in immaculate condition, and it's got a beautiful paint job. A chip on a guitar like that would seem like a wart, So I would understand somebody feeling that way. Would I dump it? I'm not sure. I'd probably try and fix it. I wouldn't want to leave it that way. Dan says, the first ding, meh. When I buy a new 5K mountain bike, I purposely drop it on a hard surface to get it out of the way. Obviously, it's not made of carbon fiber, because if you do that with a carbon fiber bike, you wouldn't be riding it long. Some guy says Trump will do more for guitars than any other president. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. That's my Trump impression. I can't do better than that. Shane says made in the USA doesn't have to appeal to me like made in Japan does. And even Fender had to stop putting made in USA on Strats. Yeah, I think a lot of companies bend the term made in whatever. And I think they're starting to adopt to things like assembled in or designed in as opposed to made in. I don't know what the percentage of an actual product needs to be made in a certain country before they actually can say it's completely made in that country. But I think it's got to be pretty high. Not really sure. So how many of you are worried about all of these crazy trade wars that are going on, that have started recently? I think a lot of people are. I'm concerned. I've heard interesting stories already popping up in terms of companies that have been saying that, things are going to get rough. Some people feel like it could be a good thing where, maybe Trump forcing companies to make more things in the United States could be a good thing. But a lot of people don't agree with that. A lot of companies don't agree with that. As a matter of fact, earlier this month, Moog synthesizers, I don't know if you know Moog, they responded to Trump or his administration on the tariffs, specifically the tariffs on China imports. And they claimed that the tariffs would drastically increase its costs. That's not a surprise. So it would probably pressure them to lay off employees and potentially force them to move some manufacturing overseas. Imagine that. So that's the reverse effect. They believe, for whatever reason, that the China tariff specifically would hinder rather than help American businesses. So I think they're arguing that it would make things difficult for them, so they would have no choice but to go and have their stuff made in China 100%, which is the opposite of what we want. And I think a lot of other, smaller companies are going to be affected, pedal companies. It remains to be seen. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's manufacturing in China is a big business, $8 billion industry, and most of it's exports. So we'll see. Tire Warrior says all this tariff BS is hurting my business. Everyone loses. Yeah, I agree. Everyone does lose. And yeah, a lot of people are waiting to see what happens long term, as long as they can hold out long term. A lot of companies can't. Vinny said the Canadian tariffs are BS too. Yeah, I think so too. I'm not talking about one country or the other. I think it's, like I said, I think tariffs hurt everybody. And I think, retaliatory tariffs are the dumbest thing in the world, because, Canada is doing that, right? We're threatening retaliatory tariffs. That just hurts us. Why would you do that? It's the dumbest thing in the world. If a country wants to impose tariffs, they're hurting themselves, so let them do it. But why would you do the same? Anyway, it's one of those things where it just snowballs. Gene says, I just bought a bag of Black Rifle coffee, $16. I'll use it in an IV. Gene, did you hear about that coffee off of Joe Rogan? Where did you... I know that Joe Rogan usually talks about the Black Rifle coffee. Yeah, we're due for the depression, Shane. We are due. We'll see where it ends. Martin says, and this is not me, this is Martin, right? Let's not start a nasty argument here today, but Martin says, if there's one area where we don't need the Orange Clown and the Americans, it's guitars. We have everything we need made in Canada, in this area at least. Look, I mean, it comes to, we can get stuff all over the place. And again, I don't think that a guitar made in a specific country is necessarily better or worse than a guitar made in another country. It all depends on the quality, the craftsmanship, the care and attention that they put into building the instrument. So, I can get a guitar that's made in China that will be beautiful, and it'll be like, it'll be fantastic if I'm willing to pay the price, And I'm not talking about clones here. I'm talking about, real guitars. Trade Warrior says, should I buy a Fender locking tuners for my Strat, or do you suggest different brand? Well, first I want to know why you think you need locking tuners. That's the first question. And then I'll answer that question. I believe recently it wasn't Fender's didn't Fender credit rating go down? I don't know if that was indirect a direct reaction to the tariffs, but I heard that the tariffs, especially on the Fender guitars from Mexico and the guitars in China, because they do make some guitars in China, would increase operating costs by $20 to $25 million for Fender. And so the credit rating for Fender is downgraded because it basically is posing new challenges. So I don't know the whole story there, and how the credit rating thing goes, but I'm sure that the extra $5 million that they incur wouldn't be absorbed. I'm sure they're going to pass it on to the customers. So I'm pretty sure the prices of everything is going to go up. I remember when Gibson had been downgraded back in 2018. That was when they filed for bankruptcy. Do you remember that? It's not that long ago. Things have improved for them, but anything could change. We don't know. Nella says, unfortunately, the Godin brands aren't the first to come to mind when thinking about buying a guitar. It's true. I agree. I think the Godin guitars are good. I've never actually owned one, and I'm here. They're basically made in my backyard, practically. So maybe it's time I try one. So Zach says Cosmo Music in Richmond Hill, Ontario, after 57 years, this week announced that they are closing their doors. Yeah, I heard about that. I know, man. That was a shock. I didn't see that coming. I read the announcement. They mentioned that it was a difficult decision, and they were basically, they didn't say it was specifically due to tariffs or what, but they said that they did say that the challenges started after COVID. Things were tough. That they did make some technological investments, but to stay ahead, but they were expensive and didn't go as planned. So I guess a couple of bad decisions. So it's unfortunate. They've been around for 57 years. It's hard to see. It's sad to see a company go after so many years. And we're starting to get like a smaller and smaller amount of choices when it comes to buying gear. It seems. Rico says, did you change cameras? On my iPad, it seems overexposed, brighter than previous episodes. Guessing it's on my end if no one has mentioned it. No, I think I actually have the light here a little bit brighter than usual. I can turn it down. It's just that if it gets too dark, I find it gets grainy. So I don't know. You tell me. I turned it down a little bit. The Nice says, Tony, can you pull out your CV Telecaster? Do you still have it? I bought mine after watching your review. I don't have the CV anymore. Are you talking about the butterscotch one? Yeah, I sold that guitar. I sold it a while ago. It was a great guitar, but it was redundant. I have a few other Telecasters now, so I didn't really feel I needed that one specifically. But I kept that one for a long time, and if you have one, I'm sure you're gonna love it. It's great. It was just too many guitars, unfortunately. Martin says, I read that Long and McQuaid is taking over Cosmo's store. Could be, man. They tend to do that. Long and McQuaid tends to do that. They kind of, swoop in and grab a good location, especially if it's a music store. They did that with the Etal Melodies and over here locally when they closed. And I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being another Long and McQuaid. They seem to still be doing well for now. Rob says, will used prices really drop much more as the economy improves? I'm not sure. That's the $1 million question, What do? Do you wait? Do you just jump on a deal? I think if there's a deal around the corner, something that you spot that seems good, just grab it regardless, because we don't know what's going to happen. It could go either way. Profile Production says, do you know anything about Synergy? I've heard about it. I've heard about their products. What do you want to ask me? Yeah, lots of glare. I don't know, man. It's like if I turn off the lights completely, then I get like it's too dark. Right? Agreed? I don't know, man. I try my best, but the camera sucks. I might have to get something better eventually. I might actually try and hook up my real camera next week and see if it can work a little bit better. So this week I actually did a review of a new product, the NUX in-ear monitor wireless system. Did you guys see that, or I don't know if you guys noticed that I posted that. I'll put the video in the link in the chat box. I don't know how many of you out there are actually even in need of something like that. I don't know a lot of people that actually work with in-ear monitors. But if you're playing in a live scenario, a lot of people do swear by the in-ear monitors. And I decided to try the system because where we play, it's loud. We play extremely loud. And it becomes very difficult to hear yourself in certain scenarios, especially when you're being drowned out by the bass player and the drummer and the other guitarist and everything like that. And many times I'm playing and it's just like I can't hear myself. And it's not a comfortable feeling to be playing a solo where you can't even hear what you're playing. It messes you up. So I figured, going with in-ear monitors would be a good solution so that I can actually just lower the volume. It doesn't have to blast or blare or anything like that, but you can actually hear what you're playing. And so I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it for the first time when we play the next rehearsal. We'll see how that goes. The problem is I got some really bad news this week, guys. Really bad news, and it's my rehearsal space that I've been going to for the last, I'm gonna say, almost 20 years has closed. They just like closed, gone, and I was freaking out. We were rehearsing there a week or two ago. Everything was fine. Talked to my buddy who happens to be the owner of the place, and I've known for years. And he did mention that he was looking to sell because he wanted to get into other things, and he didn't necessarily, I guess, want to put in so much energy into maintaining the rehearsal space and all that kind of stuff. But I thought it would be like, in the works. He'd find somebody to take over or buy it or whatever, run the place. And here I am trying to make a reservation to, book the next rehearsal. And they're closed. I contact him and he's like, yeah, sorry, dude. We're closed, man. Permanently. I'm like, what? Just like that? No warning, no nothing? So now I gotta find a better place, and honestly there is no better place. It was probably the best place around town. Good quality equipment, great rooms, lots of selection, lots of different sizes. All I had to do was bring my guitar. Everything was there, cabinets and everything, and it was very welcoming and comfortable and cozy, and it just was great, and it's gone. So now I'm gonna have to find some rat-infested place to rehearse with the boys, and it's not gonna be the same, unfortunately. So again, things are happening, man. Unfortunately, things are closing down, and it's not what you want to see. So, anyways, I don't know if any of you out there had an experience like that, but it's traumatizing. Ay, just what I needed. Rob says, here's an odd thing. My 91 Strat Plus came with a Telecaster string tag from the factory. Has that happened to anyone else? No, I never had that experience. They probably just tagged it incorrectly. And Shane says, where I often play, the PA speakers are in front of the band, making it hard to hear yourself. Well, we have PA speakers too. We have wedges, plus we have our individual cabinets and all that kind of stuff. So it's loud. It's very loud. The added advantage of using in-ear monitors is they also act as hearing protection too, because they block out the exterior sound to a certain degree, not completely. And if you lower the volume in your in-ears, you don't necessarily expose your ears to the full blast of a full band. Yeah, Wayne, I know, man. I feel bad about it, and also because there's the guys running the place were friends. It's a sad story. But what can I do? Things change along the way, and we have to adapt, I guess. So no choice, unfortunately. So are you guys learning any new tunes this week? Anybody learning something new? Um, Always good to challenge yourself and try to learn something. Mad Max is talking to Boomerang. Says, thanks. I use auto spray cans, but it's going to be blue and white and red stripes. So I don't know if we're talking about painting some stuff here. Nella says, I bought a new Gibson bass from Musician's Friend. It shipped from Guitar Center store in the wrong gig bag and a baby picture of an Explorer. Wow. That's completely wrong. What happened there? Somebody was working after a hangover or something like that. Vinny says he's relearning some stuff from an Albert Lee DVD. And Shane says he's learning Hurt So Good by John Cougar. Yeah, I haven't played that song in a long time. Ah. Probably not the right sound, but... Jeff says he got a 335 this week, an Epiphone inspired by. It's got me hankering for the Gibson. Is it worth the money difference? That's a great question. I'll answer it because I can definitely answer your question there, because I did own the 335 inspired by version, the Epiphone version, and I do have a 335 Gibson right now. And I own both at the same time. Excuse me, both at the same time. And I can tell you the difference. The Epiphone is great for the money. I don't think you're going to be hard pressed to find anything major wrong with it. It's just that it's not the same feel as a 335, and specifically the neck. This is the thing that if the neck was the same profile, exactly the same profile as my 335, I probably would have kept the Epiphone. But instead, I sold the Epiphone after a while and I kept my 335, because nothing beats the neck on my 335. It's just a beautiful slim neck. And the Epiphone necks, instead of being like a C shape, they're more of a D shape. They have like what I would call shoulders. And you feel that. My 335 Epiphone has that, and also my Epiphone inspired by SG that I showed and did a review of on the channel as well also has that. I haven't gotten rid of the SG. I kept it, but it doesn't feel like the real SG. When I say real, the real Gibson SG, or the real 335, the Gibson version. And the funny thing is, both my 335 and my SG have very similar necks, almost identical, believe it or not. And I love the feel of that neck. It's not a chunky neck at all. It's very slim. Feels and plays really wonderfully. So I ended up getting rid of the Epiphone just for that reason, but it didn't necessarily, there was nothing wrong with it. It's just that I preferred the neck on my 335, so why keep both, you know? Guys, I would appreciate if you could give me some thumbs up. We got 37 thumbs, 27 thumbs, 57 people here, so there's a few of you that, you know, didn't reach for that button. I would appreciate it if you can. So Jim is learning Time and Sultans of Swing solo. Profile's learning Word Up by Gun. Danielle's working on Someone to Watch Over Me, working out chord melodies, including the intro, figured out an arrangement. Just need to smooth it out. Boomerang is learning patterns in the Ivy. And let's see here. Max says, I should be getting my new Kramer Beretta in 2 weeks. We'll be painting it also with EVH stripes, also adding a Vega trim like yours. Dude, awesome, man. Are you painting it like the official EVH colors? Or are you going to try something a little different? It's always interesting to try something new like that. Jimmy's also working on Floods by Pantera. Paul says, hey Paul. Paul says, rehearsal space lost hundreds of times. I found unrented office spaces can be got cheap if the deal is you get out overnight if it gets rented. Yeah, but I really don't like leaving my gear someplace. There's something about leaving gear in an empty, abandoned kind of building. I prefer not to do that. Nella's working on Smoke on the Water, a classic. That's cool. I like that. Don't let anybody tell you shouldn't be playing that riff. It's a cool riff. Presley's learning, or learned, Do I Want to Know from Arctic Monkeys. Anybody else? And Searching for Tone says, never heard of it. Is it by REO Speedwagon? Man, I remember REO Speedwagon. That's an old band. Yeah. Alonzo's working on Smoke on the Water 2, trying to work out the solo. That's a killer solo, man. Smoke on the Water solo is not easy. I don't even remember. I don't remember how it goes, man. I don't know. I forget how it goes. It's that part that's really hard. I forget how that one goes, man. I gotta practice. It's been a long time since I haven't played that song. and my guitar's out of tune, and it's E flat, or it was E flat-ish. What's happening here? So the only other gear that I got this week, guys. Oh man, was really off there. No wonder it didn't sound good. Yeah, I was actually surprised by this piece of gear, and I'm going to show you in a second here. Yeah, that's better. Yeah. Is this. I was playing this little pedal here, the Diamond from NuX. This is the 63 Diamond, it's called. It's basically a Vox in a box. I may have showed you this before, but I actually was playing this yesterday through my Princeton. Did a very admirable job of getting the Vox sound out of a Princeton, which is fantastic. As you guys know, the Princeton is a pretty clean amplifier, so it's a good pedal platform if you want to really feel and hear the nuances of the pedals. And I don't own a Vox, but this kind of scratches my itch for a Vox. Did a good job. You know, immediately started playing some Beatles, immediately started playing some Queen songs and stuff like that, and it did a good job. And never underestimate a Princeton. It's a really great sounding small amplifier for home use. And with the right pedals in front of it, you can definitely push the amplifier quite a bit, and you get it into that nice breakup range too if you want to, without necessarily blowing out your eardrums. So if any of you have played around with a Princeton, you know what I'm talking about. Anybody here strictly a Vox guy in terms of amplifiers? I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of don't jump on Vox that quick. They're usually, you know, they'll try the Fender amps, they'll try the Marshall amps, they'll try some of the higher gain stuff out there, but they won't necessarily jump on Vox amplifiers right away for whatever reason. I've never owned a Vox. That's one of the amplifiers that I've never purchased. So that says a lot. Paul's suggesting we take a look at the Tone City Mandragora? Mandragora? How do you pronounce that? Mandragora. A 50s Chicago Musical Instruments amplifier in a box for $60. I feel like the Tone City gear kind of died out. They had a little peak there a little while back where everybody was talking about Tone City stuff, and then it kind of like died a little bit. I don't know why that is. Max says, gotta get locking tuners on that Beretta, Tony. Again, a lot of people say that, you know, locking tuners. Locking tuners don't lock anything. You know, a lot of people have the misconception that locking tuners are going to help with you know, not your guitar not going out of tune. They don't actually do that. They just lock your string. So you don't have to necessarily wrap your strings, but I prefer to wrap my strings. So what I really need is a locking nut. Or I need to stretch out the strings because these strings are not stretched out yet. That's why they're going out of tune like that. And the guitar wasn't actually set up for E flat tuning. Jeff says, I was learning Wasted Years a few weeks back and it was hit and miss. I returned to it this week and can nail it every time. This is something that I noticed too, Jeff. When you're playing or learning a new song, it's sometimes better not to try and learn the entire thing at once. Take it chunk by chunk. And I always feel like when you do it that way, if you sleep on it, your brain kind of works it out during the night. And you come back to it the next day and it flows a little bit better. If you do that 3 or 4, nights in a row, eventually it just comes, you just have to stick with it. Shane says he's a Vox guy. Max says the Beatles made Vox amps famous. They sure did. And Vox Guitars Rock obviously says my practice rig is Vox. Go figure. I'd be surprised if it wasn't Vox. Dan Smith says not strictly Vox, but love my AC30. Definitely rocks. Yeah, but you got to crank that thing, right? Predish says he's a Mesa Boogie guy. And Davis Music says Bryan Adams was a Vox guy. His early songs are a good example of the Vox tone. And everyone needs an AC10. I'll probably get one eventually. Just haven't gotten around to it. Jeff says I was a Vox only for years, AC30 in a single P90 guitar and treble booster. Then about 10 years ago, slipped and went headfirst down the gear rabbit hole. Yeah, that happens, man. When you're not looking, that's when it happens. Yeah. It's nice to have choice, though. There's nothing wrong with that. Have you guys seen that we were talking about road-worn guitars earlier and how some people like them, some people don't? On that subject, did you guys know that the Charvel is releasing a limited edition super stock SoCal, the SoCal 1? And it's basically a hot-rodded S-style guitar that looks like it's got some serious city miles on it because it's relict, but it's really relict. It's it looks like it's been around the block quite a few times. It's got a cool look to it. I'll maybe show you a picture of that. Not for everyone, I know. Here, let me just share my screen. See if I can actually blow this up for you guys a little bit. Yeah, let me share my screen. Here we go. So that's what it looks like. So it's a Super Strat. I'm not a big fan of the humbuckers with a single coil in the middle. Like I mentioned last week, it gets in the way. Also, I'm not a big fan of the Gibson style knobs on this guitar. I don't know why you would want to put Gibson style knobs on it. But it looks like it's been around the block quite a few times. I kind of dig the cream colored pickup bobbins. And I like the tortoise pick guard on it. But yeah, it's not for everyone. It's $1,500, limited edition. So if you guys want a beat up guitar, there it is. You can probably build one yourself if you really wanted to and save yourself a bunch, but they did it for you. So yeah, in case you're looking for one. So Eddie has a question, and he says it's a stupid question. I don't think there's any stupid questions. He says, with locking tuners and tune to standard, how far can you detune? That's a great question, actually. It all depends on how you set up your tuners. Like if you're just gonna pass it through your tuner once, lock it and cut it, you're kind of stuck. You're not going to be able to go down much. You could probably do it. You could probably do like E flat, but you're probably going to have a hard time going lower than that. This is why I like to wrap my strings on my tuners. I used to look for locking tuners, but right now I'm kind of over that. I don't really need locking tuners anymore. And this is why, like, if you break a string or something like that, like I felt like with the locking tuners, a lot of times what would happen, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, if nobody else here experienced this, but I've experienced this when you put your string through the the tip of your tuner, you lock it down, and eventually what ends up happening is the little wraps around the string, like the low E string, start to like stretch, and your strings start to sound like rubber bands just because the outer wraps are unraveling. I don't like that. So now on my guitars, even if I do have locking tuners on them, what I'll do is I'll pass it through. I won't lock them. I'll just tighten them just a little bit, but I'll wrap them. And I leave them like that. And I think that works better. I just learned that the hard way. Rexomatic says, good morning from Phoenix. Spent the week playing New Hills HN5 headless, small body, nice neck, stainless steel frets, active humbuckers with coil splits, metallic green. So it sounds like a very nice guitar, Rexo. And how did you like it? Is it a keeper? And DMAX says, weren't locking tuners designed mostly for quick changes when gigging? I think that's what they were initially meant to do. So you don't have to wrap. You just pass it through, tighten it, cut it, and you're off. But again, I'm over them. I'm over them. Yeah, J. Paul, 3 wraps is enough. I think three wraps is perfect. And talking about strings, I don't know if any of you agree with me on this. You know, like I buy strings all the time. As a matter of fact, I have a few packs here ready to go. I'm going to have to do some string changes. Why don't more string companies put in an extra high E string in the pack? Like, it should be default. You know, 90% of the time, if you're going to break a string, it's going to be the E string. And there's nothing worse than, you know, having a new set of strings on your guitar and then you've only played it about a week and you bust the E string because you bended it so hard. Then you got to like go out and, you know, buy another pack or buy those individual E strings that I like to do. I do that too sometimes just because I know, you know, luck of the draw, that's going to be what's going to break. Why don't they just make it by default? Throw in 2 high E strings in every pack. I'd buy that pack, you know, charge me an extra whatever, 50 cents, whatever it is, and I'll pay it. I used to do that, Nella. I used to buy, some companies would sell a pack of E strings, high E strings, like all 6 strings in the pack were high E strings. Unfortunately, they didn't have any, so I had to buy individuals. And, you know, they charge you $1 a string. So it's not like they're, you know, it's not cheap. But it's nice to have, you know. That would be something that they should do. Gene says, broke a low E. So proud. How did you do that, man? Eddie says, I buy 10 packs of high E's. Yeah, you got to do that, man. And Jim says, I have extra pack of E strings lying around. Buy them in bulk. I do that too sometimes. When I find them, that's what I'll do. But they charge you they charge you the same amount, if not more, sometimes just for the high E strings, which is gouging. I think they should be a little bit cheaper. Paul says he just brought out the other pedal in the line. Nuex, sorry. I'm reading too quick. Nuex just brought out the other pedal in the line, the 59 Bass Guy, a Fender Bassman. It has the same layout and looks and look as the Diamond. Yeah, I think, look, Nuex has been putting out some really good stuff lately. I'm really impressed by the quality of their pedals and the quality of their gear. They're doing an excellent job. So I'm going to probably check that one out too, because this one is very nicely made. Quality is really top notch, I gotta say. So Boomerang says, I found the same thing with Ernie Balls. Never had the same issue with the Didarios. Maybe it's the brand then. Don't know. Presley, I agree. Strings should not break that often. And if they do break, there could be an issue either at the bridge, mostly at the bridge, if anything. I agree with you. The last string that broke on me didn't really break. It kind of just unraveled. And it was in a Les Paul style guitar. And you know how the high E string, it's wrapped around itself, around the ball. When you put it into the bridge, there's the tail piece. I think what happens is sometimes if that wrap, depending on where that wrap ends, it could interfere with it could cause friction on the tailpiece, and tuning it and stuff will sort of loosen the wraps over time. Because I noticed, how sometimes a string won't break right away, but when you're tuning it, it's gonna be like you tune it up and it kind of like goes back down, and it's gonna break eventually. Something's loose on this side, and that's what it was doing, and eventually it just unraveled. So I had to change it. But they'll, eventually they'll break. Over time, they'll break. I'm usually the type of guy that doesn't necessarily change strings for no reason. I'll change strings when they break most commonly, and when the low E string starts to sound like a rubber band, I'll generally change my strings. But otherwise, I let them go. I let them go as much as I can, because once they're stretched out, they stay in tune a lot better. So when they naturally stretch, then you're not struggling with tuning as much. So why change the strings, Nella says, I bought a used Nuex Atlantic reverb and delay pedal, and it's excellent. Yeah, I know. I've seen those as well. I've tried them. And Danielle says, a lot of good string retailers in the US, e.g. Just Strings, Strings by Mail, Strings and Beyond, Give Me Some Strings, plenty of choice. The problem is I'm not in the US, so for me, shipping and maybe duties now, or tariffs, are going to kill the deal, and the exchange. I haven't found any in Canada. If I can find one of these string retailers in Canada, I will probably buy from them. In a pinch, I'll buy from Amazon if I don't feel like going to the store. Honestly, the prices are the same, if not cheaper, on Amazon. If you factor in time, gas, the drive down there, you're probably better off just buying off of Amazon, unfortunately. I know I shouldn't be saying that or encouraging it, but it's true. So yeah. Some guy says, I have a Hipshot GB bender, so the strings go into a mechanical tubing to decrease the friction coefficients, that and lithium grease. I used to use lithium grease or, some other product like, what do they call it? Nut juice. I think that's what it's called. Which is basically just an oil. Type of oil. I used to do that quite often on my guitars, but I feel like I don't have to do that as much. Once the nut is cut properly, you avoid string snagging, which makes the tuning stability better. Sometimes I'll just do a little drop, on the bridge, not necessarily the saddles, but just the screws, so that they don't bind up. Sometimes if you sweat a lot, the little hex screws sometimes get cruddy. So a little drop of oil keeps things lubricated, keeps them moving. I like to do that just as a preventative maintenance type of thing. How many of you out there work on your own guitars? I know Presley does. He's always building something or other. What do you have on the bench these days, Presley? Anything new? I know you were working on something last week. Did you finish that build? Or anybody else working on a guitar or maybe modifying it, changing pickups? Shane says, there, just change the strings on my Joker caster. I have to adjust this guitar a little bit. This one is actually a little bit, the relief on it is a little bit too low. Just like a quarter turn will do it, just to give it a little bit more, especially on the higher strings. I have sometimes trouble grabbing the higher strings. Max says he uses 3-in-1 oil on the guitar nuts, sometimes Vaseline mixed with graphite. Yeah, some people use just a little bit of pencil lead, graphite basically. The only thing with graphite, it turns the nut black sometimes, which is not the best. Wayne builds his own guitars. Vinny's World builds his own part casters. Mark also does the same. David said, I can set everything up except the nut. Why do you have trouble with the nut, David? Some guy says, I'm clueless. Max says, I'm always tinkering with guitars all week. This week, it's painting them. Eddie uses gun oil on all the screws and moving parts. And Jim says he puts necks on, he does setups, not build from raw wood. I don't do that either. I don't do that because, yeah, it's too much work. I tend to buy parts already made. It makes it so much quicker and easier. And plus, I don't have the time or tools to build from scratch like that. Shane says, my local tech charges $15 for a setup, so why not have him do it? That's cheap, man. $15 for a setup? That's not much. Around here, they typically charge $90 or around there. I don't know when the setups became that expensive, but yeah, it's well worth it to learn how to do it yourself. J. Paul says he's got the Nazgul rails on his Epi Les Paul. I'm about to get the matching sentient for the neck position. That's going to be cool, J. Paul. Be cool to hear how it sounds once you're ready. Alonzo says, last night constructed a new pedal board, going old school for a while. When you said you constructed a new pedal board, did you mean you built the pedal board or you put together pedals on your board? Some people do both, so I need to ask. David says, no trouble with the nut, just haven't had to work on one yet. That's good news. That's what you want. You want to not have to work on the nuts as much as possible. Gene's building 2 cigar box guitars. Never did that. That's cool. And Mark is in the process of modifying a Floyd Rose Discovery guitar. What are the mods going into that guitar, Mark? So, Paul, you do that too? You wait for the rubber band sound? Yeah, me too. Some guy says a buddy plecked a 57 Strat recently. Why not? Why wouldn't you? There's no rules that says you can't pleck a Strat or a 57. Max says, I recently put in pre-cut brass nuts on all my guitars. Music Lily is cheap and very good. I've tried some of the Music Lily stuff too, but I've never actually tried the brass nut. What difference do you see or hear or feel with the brass nut, Max? I haven't bothered with a brass nut because really the only time you're actually going to hear the influence of the material on the nut is when you're strumming an open string. Otherwise, you're fretting it, you're not going to hear it. The nut's out of the equation. So I never really bothered. Jeff says, I've become good at soldering because 90% of the time I need to change the pots to lefty taper ones. I always feel it's a good skill to have, soldering, because you're going to be able to change your pots on your guitar or fix the wires and stuff. Most of the time, that is what is causing the issue, I feel. It's mostly wiring issues. That happens a lot on guitars. Pots die all the time. Just the other day, I had to spray some contact cleaner on my SG, in my SG pot, because it was, when I would turn it all the way up, it would die. It would like, so I was going to change the pot, but I said, let me try the contact cleaner first to see what happens. And that seems to have done the trick for now. If I still have issues, I'm going to have to change it out. Shane says, best way to get reverb: the amp, a pedal, or an effects unit? Yes. All of those, Shane. I mean, obviously, if your amp already has reverb and it's a good reverb, then you're set. Depends on what kind of reverb, because typically, you know, an amp with a real spring reverb only offers that spring reverb sound. So if you're looking for a plate reverb or a hall reverb or something like that, you're not typically going to get it from a real reverb tank in an amplifier. So then you might want to buy a pedal or an effects unit. There's excellent pedals that offer good reverb. You can obviously get an effects unit, you know, a multi-effects unit. They pretty much all come with a few reverbs nowadays. I don't have a dedicated reverb pedal. I just realized that. Most of the time, if I'm going to be using reverb in a live scenario, I'll probably bring my multi-effects unit to do that, and I won't necessarily play through an amplifier. If I do bring an amplifier and I'm bringing, let's say the Marshall, for example, doesn't have reverb, or the Friedman doesn't have reverb, or the Brunetti Pleximan doesn't have reverb, so I would basically play without reverb because I don't have a dedicated reverb pedal. But what I'll do is sometimes what I'll do is I'll fake it and I'll just use my delay pedal and put the delay to a really short slap back delay, and it tends to simulate a little bit of reverb that way. It's another way you can do it. Paul says an average setup state size is about $110. When did the prices become so expensive? Like a setup typically used to be about $60. Now it's like almost $100. Yeah, things went up. I guess I've been out of it long enough to not realize how the prices increased, because I do my own setups most of the time. I rarely bring a guitar somewhere anymore. Jim says, anyone ever try sevens? Bought a used Jackson that had them on it. It's interesting how light a touch it takes. I have a set of sevens that I never actually installed yet. I talked about it many times, which is Reverend. I forget what they're called. Reverend Willie, I think they're called. They're made by Billy Gibbons, or they're made for Billy Gibbons. They're sevens. I never actually installed them yet. I couldn't decide which guitar to put them on. it's funny because I was having this discussion with a friend of mine the other day, and he's like, I'm like, I need some strings, and he's like, okay, like what size? So I said, I need some nines. So he gave me the nines, and he's like, are you putting them on a Gibson? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, don't you want tens? I'm like, no, I want nines. And he's like, well, usually Gibsons are set up with tens. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what they're usually set up as. I like nines. He's trying to sell me on the tens. I'm like, no, I don't need tens. So yeah, I don't know if there's any real rule, hard and fast rule that you have to set up, you know, a Gibson Les Paul with tens. I think what he was trying to tell me is that from the factory, I think they're set up with tens. But I really don't care. I usually set up mine with nines. And actually, they even have 9.5s now, which is kind of in between. If you're really like not sure, you can go with 9.5s. J. Paul says, freaking dust gets in him in my case. I try to give each pot a whirl a few times each session to help sweep it off. How does the dust get in your case? Dust from where? Yeah, those pots eventually get dirty on their own. I don't know what it is, but a little contact cleaner, man. You can get that off, you know, Canadian Tire or whatever. It works really well. Just spray it in there every time you're setting up your guitar, changing your strings. Just do a couple of turns on it. It keeps things the way it should be. I sometimes forget. Don't do it all the time. Mark says, Floyd Rose totally missed the mark on the design of the Discovery. He's like, WTF? What were they thinking? I'm not sure. Sometimes companies do weird things. It just seems odd, some of the stuff that they do. We'll talk about that in a minute. J. Paul says, I'm trying 8.5s actually today for the first time, but I'm a huge fan of 9s. Yeah, for me, 9s is the go-to. 8.5 could be cool too, though. Fox says, the K-Line Snakebite Reverb gets good reviews and is not expensive. Max also uses 9s on his Gibson. And some guy says, you just can't go bigger than the nut. Yeah, I agree. You don't want to go with fatter strings than your nut slots are cut for. Then you're going to get snagging issues. Shane says, I put 10s on my Les Paul so they feel more like a Strat. And Ian's Guitar Shack is here. He says, hello, Tony and everybody. Hey, Ian, what's up? What's happening? Ian says, oops, caps on. I noticed that. You must be a fast typer. You didn't even notice it when you were typing it. DMAX says the TC Plethora TX X1, has all their popular effects in one pedal and can just use one at a time. Yeah, I always thought that was the drawback to that unit. Like, why would you want to have it so that you have all the effects, but you can only use one at a time? Yeah. Paul says, not case like a guitar case. I have a dusty home and the pots get dusty. They are like metal plates with a piece that sweeps over the top where the dust collects and makes the crackling noise. So, J. Paul, you know the answer. You just have to dust more often at your place. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today, one of the discussions I wanted to have is, what do you think, like what makes a guitar unattractive to you guys? You know what I mean? Like if you see a guitar, what would make you say like, oh man, that guitar is like ugly. Like I would never buy that guitar. Is there anything specific that you shun when you see a guitar? For me, it's the headstock. First thing is the headstock. If it has an ugly headstock, I have a hard time buying the guitar. I'm used to the Fender headstock. I'm used to it took me a long time even to get used to the Telecaster headstock. For the longest time, I always thought that the Telecaster headstock looked ugly because I was so used to seeing the Fender headstock. I couldn't get used to the small version of that. Now I've got accustomed to it, so it doesn't bother me as much. But at the beginning, it was definitely the headstock shape. And still today, if it has a crazy headstock shape or a complicated shape, or if the headstock doesn't seem balanced with the guitar for whatever reason, I'm going to have a hard time buying that guitar. For the longest time, I would stay away from the Epiphones. I didn't like the old-fashioned Epiphone headstocks. They were just too long and didn't look nice. Now the Inspired By series seems a little bit better. I'm still not 100% convinced, but it's way better than it used to be. If they would go to the Gibson shape, then I would definitely have no issues buying those. So I'm curious what you guys think. Boomerang says, have you ever tried playing two of your amps in stereo, Tony? Yeah, I have. I have done that. Just by, mixing with a switcher pedal. It's pretty cool. It's very interesting when you do that. You can fill in the missing frequencies that sometimes you're experiencing. Rob says, always keep your case vacuumed. That's a good tip for J. Paul. J. Paul, I know what you mean. I know what you mean when you say your dog's a shedding machine. My dog, my old dog, my previous dog, may she rest in peace. I'm still finding hair around the house from time to time, and she's been gone for a while now. Miss that dog so much, man. You wouldn't believe. Let's see here. Shane says, Floyd Rose specials where I live sell for about $270. My used $100 ESP Grassroots has a Floyd Rose special on it. Tempted to take off the Floyd Rose and just sell it. So just one thing, Shane. The Floyd Rose specials are not like the original Floyd Rose. And I'm surprised that they're selling for $270. That's a lot for a Floyd Rose special. But the Floyd Rose special, if you look at the details, they're not made with the same materials or the same level of precision as the original German Floyd Rose. They're basically OEM versions made by someone else. Some of them are quite good, but I find $270 for a Floyd Rose special is a lot. Paul says the average 1 hour shop time for fixing a car is $110 US, and it's become the yardstick for repairing anything. I guess, but it seems very expensive. I mean, if I'm paying $100 an hour for time, the guy better be very good. Very good. You're good, you. Otherwise, I feel like I'd be getting ripped off. So Mark says that certain colors turn him off. Yes, that's a big one for me too. A lot of times I find myself shunning the Charvels specifically because they always come out with like oddball colors. That's a Charvel thing. I don't know why they're doing that. I think there's such a throwback to the 80s, but it would be nice to have some like more subdued colors in some of the Charvel line. Shane says PRS looks like pregnant Strats. And those birds are over branding. It used to be that you would be able to get PRS guitars with no birds. You can get just dots. Now everybody, I think they got rid of the dots. They decided to go with the birds everywhere. So if you find like the PRS looks like a pregnant Strat, what's the difference between a PRS and a Gibson Les Paul? They both have the carve. It's kind of the same thing, no? Gene says, I don't like heavy extra switches or heavy weights. Yeah, the heavy weight on a guitar for me is like a no-go. I agree. Vinny says, Bigsby. Yeah, me too. I'm not a Bigsby guy. I don't see myself attracted to a Bigsby style guitar for whatever reason. If it's a Gretsch and it comes on a Gretsch because it's an old Gretsch, I can live with it, but I wouldn't say, hey, I gotta get a guitar that has a Bigsby on it. And David says, if I'm being honest, quilted maple's a turnoff for me. You know what, David, now that I think about it, you're right. I'm not a big fan of quilted maple either. It's weird, isn't it? I like the flame maple, but the quilted maple doesn't really do it for me either. Like I wouldn't say no to a guitar because it was quilted maple, but it wouldn't be my first choice. Like if I couldn't get that guitar style and any other finish, all they had was quilted maple, okay. But it would be a hard sell. Shane says, birds are for old aunties, not fretboards. David says, Floyd bridges are a deal breaker for me. Yeah, the Floyds are not necessarily a deal breaker for me, but I don't go out of my way to find guitars that have Floyd roses on them anymore. There's other alternatives these days that are less finicky. It's me, Don P says, hockey stick headstocks. He doesn't like the hockey stick headstocks. I don't mind the hockey sticks. I'm not crazy about the pointy hockey sticks. I don't like those as much. Mark says, mother of toilet seat. I gotta agree with that. Zero frets, says Gene. Yuck. But they work really well, though. Max says, Schaller is better than Floyd Rose Specials. Schaller made in Germany at the same factory as Floyd Rose Originals and half the price. Yeah, I do agree with that. The Schallers are better. Nella says you got to get over the headstock. You're missing out on great guitars by shedding them over the headstock. That said, I still can't stand the PRE, the pre-2020 Epiphone headstock on the Epiphone Les Paul and the SG style. I agree with you, man. I mentioned that earlier. Epi headstocks, the older ones, no can do. It just reminds me of an old lady for whatever reason. I don't know why. Whenever I look at that. Shane says, lots of PRS flame tops have horrible matchings as well. I noticed that on the SEs, specifically the Tremontis. I was looking at maybe getting a Tremonti SE PRS for a long time, and those typically have like the fake flame maple tops, and almost always, if you look at them, one side is darker than the other. I don't know how they can even sell them. Like, to me, that's B-stock. But they consistently have them out there. I don't know why. Like, I'm sure if I go on to Reverb right now and I do a search, I'll find you a few of them. Let me see here. Let me see. Are there any? It'd be easier if I spelled it right. All right, let's have a look-see. Check this out, guys. You'll see what I mean. It's right here, look. Like I'm just pulling up one or two, okay? But like this is a perfect example. Look at this. Look at the right side of that top and look at the left side of that top. Like to me, that's B stock. I wouldn't buy that. It's totally different. They have such a hard time matching the tops. I don't know why that is. It's really oddball. You can get lucky and find some good ones. But here, that's one. There's this one. Same thing. Different seller, I think. See, it's not as obvious on this particular picture, but you can see the difference. Like the right side is clearly darker than the left side here. Can you see that? I don't know. It's just one of those things. If you get lucky, like maybe this one's better. This one, it could also be the lighting. It's hard to see. Nah, see this one too. See how defined the left side is compared to the right side? Like it's better, but it's not as good. It's not as good as the you know, the real ones, the core models. Let me just see if I can, like, out of all these guitars, all these Tremontis, if I had to pick one, I'd have a hard time. Because the tops, man, there's not one that, like, look at this one here. Look how different both sides are. Can you see this? Like, look how thick the flame is on the right and how thin it is on the left. That's not right. To me, that's like a B stock. I'm telling you, man. I don't know what it is. They all have it. All of them. This is why I haven't purchased one yet. I couldn't find one that doesn't have that issue. Now, I don't know if all these guitars on reverb are just seconds, but there's not like one. Oh, maybe this guy. Hold on. I think we have a winner. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. This one's good. Yeah, I think this one's good. Let me see. This one looks nice. This one looks good. See, that's what it should look like. Anyways, maybe I'm just picky like that. How come you don't see my screen? I'm talking to myself all this time. You don't see my screen? What? Okay, I was sharing the screen. What the hell? Well, now I look stupid. Let me see here. Can you see my screen now? Do you see it? Do you see my screen now, guys? I hope you do, because I was talking about other stuff before and I was trying to show you stuff on my screen. Nothing? Do you see it or not, guys? Give me a heads up here. Do you see my screen or no? I guess not. Okay, let me see something here. Let me see something here. I don't know why that is. Anyways, it's a setting. Forget it. All I can tell you is when you go out and take a look at the Tremonti guitars, just look at the tops. You'll see what I mean. I was showing you the Charvel earlier on the screen and you guys didn't say anything. So I assumed you were able to see it. Anyways, I'll figure that out some other time. No big deal. Gene says, this is like the time he couldn't close his screen. I remember that. That was funny. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Technical issues. And you didn't see the Charvel Relic either. So what the hell, man? All right. I'll try and iron out those things next time. I apologize, guys. You got to let me know earlier next time. Okay, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up now. I think I've been talking way too long, an hour and 45 minutes. I appreciate you guys sticking around even without even with the technical issues with the screen and everything. If you guys have anything you want to discuss or you want me to review for you guys specifically, please let me know. I'm always happy to try and oblige. Keep the conversations happening. I know you guys are always looking for new stuff, new gear and whatnot. If I can oblige with any kind of reviews, let me know. I'll be reviewing something for you guys today if I have time to actually do a quick review. I have a pedal I want to share with you guys, so keep your eyes open for that review this week. If there's any last minute questions, guys, now's the time. J. Paul says, it's okay, it was still great content. Thanks, J. Paul. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Vox says, see what happens when you're not playing a Telecaster. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I think I'm the one that's scumbombulated this morning. And Paul says, Tony, the special Floyd is a term. I'm trying to read here. The special Floyd is term that use the same as licensed by. There are 0 specs for it. 10 companies can make 10 entirely different physically and in quality. Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying, Paul. It's an OEM. Special just means it's not made by Floyd. It could be made by various companies. And the quality is not always the same. I got you, man. I got you. I understand what you mean. It's me, Don P says, the play-by-play was great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, guys. Michael popped up late. Hey, Michael. Nice to see you, man. We're heading off. I'm done. I've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes, dude. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to watch the replay here. But I appreciate you coming in. Eddie says it's like listening to baseball on the radio. Michael, it's they're making fun of me, Michael. I was trying to show them something on my screen, and I thought the screen was being shared, but it's not. And because it's not, I'm talking and I'm going through things like as if everybody can see what I'm showing, and nobody's seeing anything. So I was kind of dumb, but things happen. John's got a question for me, so we're going to answer the question before we go. John says, good morning, dear Tony. Hey, thanks, John. I have a question for you. I'm thinking of buying an Orange Crush 12 or 20 watt amplifier. Do you think it could be a good idea? Regards from Lima, Peru. Look, there's nothing wrong with one of those Orange Crush amps. They definitely have that orange sound to them. And sometimes they don't have a lot of headroom if you want to get a clean amplifier or have the ability to have a good clean tone as well as a driven tone. They do a nice drive. Orange amplifiers tend to have a nice overdrive on them. So it really depends on whether or not you're looking or have a need to have a clean amp. If you're looking for something that has a little bit more headroom, you might look elsewhere. That's my only thing with the Orange amplifiers. They tend to have, they break up like really early. And Casey Lee says, my only PRS is a Paul Allender model with large bats instead of small birds on the fretboard. Quilted maple purple burst. It looks amazing. I mentioned the bats to Shane a while ago if he didn't like the birds. The bats are more metal. Maybe, Shane, would you like the bats instead of the birds? Maybe not. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to another Sunday edition of Addicted to Gear. I appreciate you guys dropping in, making my Sunday a lot of fun. Hopefully you enjoyed the topics that we discussed here today. There'll be more topics coming up next Sunday. So if you guys tuned in late or perhaps couldn't make the show and are watching the rerun, by all means set your alarm or mark it down on your calendar for next Sunday, because we'll be back with more. In the meantime, keep on rocking, guys, and go practice playing some music. I think you guys are going to get a lot more enjoyment out of your guitars and gear if you go and play. So Get to the playing part, guys. All right? Talk to you soon. Have a great day. Have a great rest of the week. And we'll be back with more on the next show. See you then.